Hello, I'm FGX Toycat, and welcome back to episode 423 of the Minecraft Xbox Update Adventures Let's Play. This is the weekly update as to what's going on in the survival world and indeed everything else. Although this is episode 423, so at this point we mostly dive into what it really means to be alive and the value of all of that, and the philosophy behind, should you even consider those things. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you're looking forward to it. Yes, that's my real intro, because we're diving straight into this. We're going to be doing two major different things that both kind of tie into, I guess, future things you might see on the channel. So obviously they've both been in my mind a lot, and they're both things I really want to kind of solve here in this video. And that might sound like a nebulous start, so how about I just say, today we're going to work on some ice islands. It's going to be great, isn't it? But to get to the ice islands, I need to take the big ice pathway, which is always ridiculously fun. Although I never have boats anymore because I take them to one end, then they fly off the edge, and then I don't take them back. So we're going to have to find a boat, and then we're going to ride that to the other side. And yeah, today's video is mostly going to be focused on making these icy builds. It's going to be great fun because it's just another project to add to the world. I really enjoy seeing these projects as I pass them, like this one right here, for instance, where it's like, oh yeah, that was a giant thing that I did. Why did I take an entire Nether Fortress apart and put it back in, together? I don't know, but I'm glad I did, vaguely. And yeah, I don't know, but I'm glad I did is something which I would say defines a lot of human behavior, right? And that's why it's going to come up as like a discussion about what really, like good even is. The biggest question, because like a lot of people like the dabbling in philosophical subjects that sometimes comes with these videos, but the biggest question of all is like, what is good, right? What is a good thing to do over the world? Because people like to believe there's a concept of good and evil for the purpose of movies, but does that really line up with how we see the world? Is anyone ever evil to themselves? I would say probably not, right? Also, now we're going to take a slight sideways turn. It's always very hard to do correctly without falling off the edge, but I believe in myself. Aha, we have done it. So yeah, what we're doing today, by the way, is we're mostly placing ice, but I've also got some grass and some saplings that should also make things great, because one of the big projects I've been kind of putting off for a while now has been the ice islands. You might have heard this, like I've said like 3 times now, I'm gonna finish it right now, and then I just kind of don't. It's one of these big project videos that I'm so hyped for people to see, but I just can't like put an, oh god, an end to it properly. I'm so glad I got out of that boat, because it looked like it was going into the water, and oh, it did go into the water. Actually, did it? Would that have killed me if I stayed in it? We'll find out another day. You can do that test yourself if you'd like to at some point. But yeah, there's it's one of those things where like I generally try not to talk about a thing it's gonna get done, because when you do, you kind of get the a lot of the satisfaction from having done it, from telling people you're going to do it, right? Or that it's going to be done by a certain point in time. There's a satisfaction that comes from telling people you're doing something, but there's not satisfaction if you tell people you've done something already, or it's going to be done by this time, and it just kind of goes away, the good feelings, and then you eventually, you feel less motivated to do it, but then you get trapped in this whole thing of like, oh, this was meant to be done a while ago. I really want this to be done, but I just can't bring myself to do it. And yeah, that's where these ice islands fit in that model for me. But anyway, yeah, let's grab some packed ice, let's grab some snow, which I think we're slowly running out of, because snow's a lot harder to come by than packed ice when you've mined an entire iceberg biome, but again, separate issue, separate time. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's work on some islands, because for the most part now, I think we're doing pretty good on the island front. I'll give you a full view as we go up here, and then use the scaffolding to get on top. I think this is the highest point in the island so far, so you can get a feel that like, oh yeah, looks pretty nice. We've got a whole little area here, but the islands need a tiny bit more life, the big ones at least. I think the tiny islands look pretty good. You can disagree, but you know what? It's, everyone can disagree with everything all the time, so that's fine. And second of all, I think the bigger islands need like, I think that one grass block genuinely is a good thing. I think some spruce saplings on the bigger islands, like right up here for instance, why don't I have a sapling? There's no good reason. So we're gonna silk touch this snow block, which does nothing apparently, and we're gonna place a sapling there, and we're gonna wait until it grows. It's gonna be wonderful, right? And we're gonna wait until it grows. That's right, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna look at a tree, because that's something some of you would find value in, you could say. Okay, I've waited like a minute and the tree hasn't grown, so maybe we'll have to come back to this later. Have you noticed how the clouds here don't seem to be moving? Like, I could be crazy, but I think the cloud is staying in the exact same place, which to me feels like a bug. Could be wrong on that one. Could be entirely off base. And yeah, that cloud is missing a side, which is also very strange and confusing. But this is just what you put up with sometimes. When you play Bedrock, you get a lot of fun, and you get a lot of confusing moments, and that is definitely one of them. Anyway, though, so I need to make one big last island, and it's something I'm going to do over here. And I want to talk about while we do this, which is maybe going to involve some tips that you might find useful if we had water with us, which we soon will, because you better believe I've got an ocean full of it. But the reason that I've been putting this off to some extent is because you know, like, just I haven't been playing as many huge hours of survival by myself, off stream, off these sorts of things over here. Like, it's a lot of specific things I have to be doing to make these project videos, and obviously that's a thing you expect in that way. But the reason that I haven't been so motivated is because the way I work as a person, maybe you've worked this out from the fact that I travel so much, or maybe you just think that, like, I'm a wildly eccentric man that also sometimes make videos. If so, I like that worldview. Please keep thinking that of me. I mean, it's not necessarily true, but you know what? What is true? It's 2019, am I right? I can say that all day, can't I? But yeah, the interesting thing to me, here's, by the way, how you place blocks down when you're in the ceiling. Use water, and then, or not the ceiling, the sky. I mean, the sky is kind of a form of the ceiling. It's like the ceiling of the world, if you think about it, but you probably don't want to think about it too much, so I won't force you to. But, yeah, there's this kind of interesting thing to me. Also, we're going to get a beautiful sunset today. It's not quite, you know, RTX beautiful, but watching the sunset in Minecraft is great. Kind of like how, you know, taking a break from things is something I've mentioned before. It's just so valuable to me. I think it's valuable to everyone, but, like, most people don't know it or don't admit it, or, you know, don't like to admit that it's true, because then they have to say that, like, well, I'm not taking enough breaks right now, and that's sad and tragic. I don't know what the truth of the matter is. I don't claim to take a thing on that. But the way I function best, the way I get the most things done that I find good and that hopefully people find value in as well. See value, that word's coming up again. It's gonna all come together. This is gonna be a great video that's gonna maybe teach you a thing about that. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just using the word value to confuse you, because, you know, that's what goodness really is in a way. Being good to someone is confusing them and lying to them until they realize that you are, but they realize that you did it for a good reason. And today, I'm going to lie to you for good reasons. That was a lie. But it was a lie of a good reason. There we go. I'm so bad at flying, by the way. Oh, the clouds are moving again. I wonder why they stopped. What a weird thing. That was a momentary bug. How was it momentary? What caused it? Why is it gone now? These are questions that I want to know the answers to, but I just know I never will. And that's okay. Kind of like how it's okay for me. One of the things, you know, productivity is something everyone desires on some level, right? We don't all want to be productive about the same things or towards the same things usually. But most people, generally speaking, do want to be productive. They want to do things that achieve some goodness or value or purpose in the world, right? And sometimes that value, purpose, blah, 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 comes from yourself. Sometimes that value, purpose, etc., 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 can be really inherent. But sometimes you want to achieve the thing, but yet you don't. And although there's a lot of reasons why, on a personal, psychological level, like why you don't want to do things that are useful to you, there's a lot of them. We go through some of them before. But I also think there's this interesting thing where, like, sometimes, you know, like, one of the most important things to work out is how you get the most work from you as a person. You are, you know, as someone who is self-employed, I am on a legal level my own boss, right? That's what people call self-employed people. Oh, I work for myself. I'm my own boss. You know, I quit the 9 to 5 and now I'm the boss here, which, you know, like, it's such a weird thing to say because it just means, like, hey, I am now free to make my own decisions, but also I suffer a lot more from the consequences from the bad decisions. That's basically what it's saying on some level. But yeah, so as someone who is their own boss, who has to work out how to motivate themselves, there's a lot of, like, thought in my head that I guess maybe managers would think about, because I guess I'm my own manager. And one of those things is, like, how do you get the most from yourself? You know, overall, like, how do I get the most views or the most, you know, like, engagement, or the most whatever it is that YouTube wants on some level? That's definitely a thought. Or even before I started YouTube, like, how do I get the most work out of myself, etc., etc., etc. And the thing I've always found has been so true for me is I need to do everything in big bursts. Again, this might be true for someone out there, maybe this is just how I do things, but, like, I need to focus on a task and then go insane overdrive until I cannot anymore, and then I'll stop for a really long time, for, like, at least a day, sometimes like a week or something. That's actually how these big projects, like, as a whole, that's how all of the, you know, dozens of hours of work that's been done on this one so far, That's how these things get done. I get really motivated, I stick to it, and then I think, you know, I'm good with this for a while now. And then eventually, I'll pick it up again. Like right now, today, after this video's finished, I'm going to make a Let's Play. It's going to be a whole fun thing. But then also, I'm going to finish this so I can piece together the project, so I can get it sent to an editor, so I can start the process of making that whole thing a thing, and like approving and like coming up with ideas to make it a more fun video. That is, you know, if it comes to that. Also, I think we're going too big this way, so we're going to start expanding way more this way now. But because I want a big island. This is going to be the biggest island we have of all of them. Because I think we need like a big centerpiece, like a place for everyone to live on, and that's what this is going to be. So yeah, expect to see a video explaining how all of this came together at some point soon. This is just a big promotional piece where I'm saying, hey, after this, I am forcing myself to do, or not forcing, I'm the one task I want to achieve today, more than anything else. You know, I've got some vegan hot dogs and some bacon I'm going to mix together. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that too. There's lots of other small tasks that's like, hey, I want to do this. Like, but the big like task my brain is focused on is get this done. You've wanted to do it forever, so wouldn't it be cool if you did it? Is basically how things are working up there right now. And as much as I'm sure you care about my working idiosyncrasies, which I think I went far too much depth into right there, you know, this is something I think can't be unique just to me, or at least the idea of having like a non-set work pattern can't be a rare thing. I think everyone in the world wants to achieve good. You know how I said earlier, no one thinks of themselves as evil? Everyone wants to achieve good in the world, right? Everyone wants to achieve productive things, or, you know, like sometimes different productive things. Sometimes your productive thing might be robbing a bank because you think that bankers are all crooks, because you read a thing online that said that they caused the 2007 financial crisis and none of them even went to prison. Wow, isn't that crazy that people commit crimes and go to prison? Because that's definitely what happened in that case right there. There must be, and then blah, blah, blah. Like, sure, you know, sometimes you go down a crazy rabbit hole about what you can do to do good, but everyone wants to do that, and sometimes it's just like the way you get that out of yourself is different. The way you can pull you know, said good things from yourself is going to be different for everyone. But I feel like we live in a system that, even though, you know, as someone who likes conformity, I hate when people are wildly out there in a way that is hurtful to everyone around them. You know, call me crazy, or please don't, but you know, like, because that would be wildly hurtful. And but like, no, yeah, I feel like even though there are a lot of people that do that, even though I like conformity on some level, the idea of school in every major nation, like the one you're watching this video in, is kind of saying, hey, instead of being able to do things on your own pace, no, you do things on our pace. And it's like, okay, that's kind of weird, but at least it forces you to have a certain amount of knowledge that goes into you every day. I once asked the teacher, like, hey, I'm willing to do all the work, but just give it to me all now. I'll do it now, and then I'll take the rest, not the rest of the year, but like the rest of the next 3 weeks off. And she's like, no, I'll set it every week and you do it every week. And it's like, well, then some weeks I just won't do it. And she's like, wow, no, you're not doing it by my system. I'm the one in charge. And I get power dynamics. I get control dynamics. I mentioned that's a thing that I totally, I don't know what the word would be, like believe in on some level. But like, even though those are things for me, even though that's a thing for me as a whole, even though that's something I understand, it's something where it's like, hey, shouldn't the point of school not be to let some teacher have control over, you know, these students for unnecessarily unfair amounts of time of the day, which is what they like to use it as. It's a weird power game to them. But instead, shouldn't it be like, hey, can't we teach these people how to do great things in the world? Because they're our future or whatever. I mean, like, I hate that phrase, but it is literally true. Like, you know, people in school right now are the ones who will determine the future of humanity. So rather than, like, again, trying to push our weird beliefs on them and trying to, you know, like, one of the worst things is, like, you know, work-life balance is one of the best things that can help you achieve things. You know, like, taking a week and a half-ish break. Even though it sounds like, oh, that means you didn't do anything for that week and a half to do with the thing you value most in the world. But it means when I get back, I'm going to be much better and, like, overall it results more stuff. School does not teach you work-life balance. It teaches you the opposite. So I refuse to do homework just on, like, a fundamental level. I'm lucky that I went to a school where I could basically get away with that. Basically was the key word there. But, like, isn't it insane, literally ridiculous, that the idea of school is like, hey, you know, the place where you go to learn, you know, where you spend 6, sometimes 8 hours a day, most of your week. oh yeah, sometimes that place needs to teach you the value of learning by yourself outside of that. So the place where you go home to relax, to recover, no relaxing and recovering. We want you stressed all the time. Do you have homework? Did you forget about it? We want you to be thinking that non-stop. It's like, yeah, what a great system. I'm glad someone came up with homework, and for some reason it hasn't been outlawed in most major Western countries. I think in Finland it's literally banned. Like, hey, if you want the kids to learn something, put it in their learning time. Their 30 to 40 or whatever hours a week that are dedicated to learning. How about that be? That should be the place for it, right? Like, I think it's insane, the idea that you should have to learn outside of your learning hours. Make the learning hours longer if you want people to learn for longer. You know, it's like I think it's Office Space, the movie where it's like, hey, you know, you've got the right number of things on, but really what we want is more than the right number. It's like, well, shouldn't you raise the number? But we just, you know, we're not raising the requirement. We just want you to do above the requirement. So you require more than the requirement. Yes, that's exactly what school is. And yeah, I don't know, I find that crazy. And it's a good point, like, not only, you know, I guess homework rant, side note here, but just set myself on fire. What a wonderful day it is to be alive. But yeah, besides that, also, I don't like this island shape. I think we want to make it a bit bigger, maybe. It doesn't feel right now. Or maybe it feels really right. No, it feels wrong. I think we got to have like a bigger slope up, and then have a big flat plateau at the top. Yeah, that's definitely what I want. Like 2 or 3 more layers up, and then we'll do it that way. Hey, the tree has grown, by the way, as I went to sleep. Also, there's a random tropical fish and a drowned chilling on the island. I think that adds some life to it, though, because it's also, I think it's called a dead tree, a diseased tree, a wild tree. It's got the vines on it, so I think that's a good center point. But yeah, let's go back to our other thing. I guess we're just gonna have to kill the drowned, because it's hard to get from here to there for some reason. Let's just fly. Let's kill the drowned that way, and then let's hop up. How nice and how easy. And also, let's kill that clownfish. Oh, there's a lot of tropical fish here. Oh, and we get to trade it. See, everything is just working out Toy Cat way today. They can actually survive that. It's so ridiculous to me that we're just spawning in tropical fish and they're slowly being pushed out. But again, that's the world we live in. We just got to accept it sometimes. Speaking of accepting things, let me talk about something I don't accept, because, you know, my weird rants on homework aside, one of the things I really am... the reason that the school thing's been on my mind a lot, the reason that's been something that I kind of wanted to talk about, is because I've been thinking a lot about what is good, what is evil, what is, you know, because, you know, there's always the endless, like, thing of, like, you know, it's a very simple conversation to shut down, like, there is no good, there is no evil, and I basically agree with that, right? Like, yeah, no one's setting out to be an evil person, so we're really just describing ourselves, our own definitions of good and evil. You know, there are things that I find especially good that some people might not find good. There are some things I find especially evil that some people might be like, well, actually, that has some value. Most evil things are agreed on by most people as being bad, but then who's doing them? Well, people who are in desperate situations who think that it's worth doing. Someone, this is the most minor inconvenience. But, you know, let's turn this into homeless people somehow, because someone on the train yesterday that I was taken. Oh, wait, long story short, I went to Microsoft. Not Microsoft. I went to an event with Nvidia. Sorry, Microsoft doesn't like invite me places because I was honest about their microtransaction system. And you know what? It's okay if they don't value my honesty. I value it, and some of you probably value it, and that's all that counts in the world, right? But no, so one of the things that I am wildly fascinated by is, like, when you see people who like get on trains, which, by the way, they're committing a crime to do, and then they're also committing another crime by soliciting on a train, and then they're doing it, statistically speaking, in the UK, I can't speak to where you live personally, statistically speaking, a lot of people who do that, it's about, you know, it's a mix between, you know, beggars who are, you know, something drugs, and something mental illness. But they're people, you know, like, both those things are very different responses, right? You don't know which you're getting, so is it best to, you know, like, logically speaking, a lot of people think, well, I don't know for sure what this is going to, and clearly they need it, so I'll give them some money. You commit a very good act when you give a homeless person some money, sort of, right? Because on the one level, you're doing a really good thing. There's a politician in the UK, you won't know who he is, but he was a former Prime Minister candidate from, like, 2015. There was a video of him coming out and just, like, going to a cash point across the street to give some homeless person, I think it was like a tenner or something. Like, it wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was like a significant amount, especially on a salary that you would have as a politician. It's like, oh yeah, what a cool guy that he actually does care in a real way. But also, on the same level as that, which is an interesting clip, an interesting mention, you might think you're doing a good thing, and there's a good chance you will. Again, let's say it's 50-50. Again, the odds are in the UK. There's a study done in, I think it was Nottingham, where it's the stats are depressing on how many people it's drug hidden as homelessness or homelessness based on drugs. But the money is often not going to what you assume it is going to. But let's say it's a 50-50 between you're going to do some great act and you're going to enable someone to do harm to themselves. Because I would argue, even if you feel good, if you're allowing someone to harm themselves, that's not good. But if it's 50-50, then okay, 50% chance you've done good, 50% chance you've done evil. Does that action therefore have no inherent value? If you do something that has a 50% chance of causing someone some great, thing in their life and a 50% chance they'll hate it, should you do those things? And on a mathematical level, you can say yes. But the fun thing about our value systems is they don't work on a mathematical level. Even if the answer to that question should be yes, I think we all know that if you thought someone was going to, again, literally half a chance enjoy it, half a chance hate it, you wouldn't do the thing. Not only because it takes you effort, which is something you've got to factor into the equation, but also if you had someone, if someone asked the question of hey, there's a 50% chance someone's going to do something really nice for you, 50% chance it's going to be really, really awful. They're going to be equally nice, equally awful. You would still say, I think at least, I'm going to speak for myself, you'd still probably say no, right? I think I would say yes, because I love the randomness, the surprise, the whatever else. But I think most people would say that's a crazy opinion. No, I don't want this thing to happen to me. Not at all. Again, tell me if you disagree with that one in the comments down below. But that's because we value good things slightly less than we don't value bad things. The injustice of something bad happening is worse than the good that can happen as a result. And therefore, if you take that same 50-50 situation, it's oh yeah, actually, on average, you're committing more bad than good, assuming you think it, again, this is hypothetical. In the real world, it depends on where you are, blah, 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 blah. But let's say it's a 50-50, you would be committing more bad than good, not only because, oh yeah, if you allow someone to, oh yeah, maybe helping someone and literally potentially enabling someone to kill themselves, very different levels of good and bad. But also, also there's the fact that oh yeah, the good and the bad, if it's 50-50, is it worth doing? Who knows? But the bigger thing is that you're not only, you think of that as a decision for you, right? When you choose to give someone money or not give them money, when you choose to, give your friend a 50-50 chance of something they hate or enjoy, that decision seems like it's very based around you. That seems like it's a you decision, right? But it's also not. It's a decision that affects society as a whole. One of the things that we critically miss out in our own judgment systems, because we exist in a tribal world. For most of our history, there has not been such a thing as a global society. Some humans might know about the idea that oh yeah, there are people in China doing things right now. But for most of human history, there hasn't been a global concept or even macro actions, because most people can't think about the larger effects of a lot of their actions. For instance, take that same thing of that 50-50 chance to do good or bad, and let's say it actually is a 50-50, it's an action with no inherent good or bad value, but the thing that you are creating without even realizing it is the knock-on effect. If it becomes a known thing that, oh yeah, if you ask nicely and if you harass people on trains, they'll give you money and just go away, then now it's in the public consciousness, now it's in the sphere of knowledge that is out there. They're oh yeah, one of the ways you can make money, if you so choose to, is you just gotta harass strangers. I mean, you gotta be desperate to get to that stage, of course. No one choosably begs for money. Everyone's always got a story of oh, there's a guy who commutes into London and makes more money than, I don't know, a tube driver or something, just by begging. I don't know if I believe those. I would err on the side of not personally, but regardless of the truthness or not to them, the idea exists in all of our brains that we know oh yeah, things get really bad, really, really, really bad. It's not an option, but it's a thing you know about, and therefore some number of people will get to a really bad state where they're okay, this is the only way that I can do what I want to do, whether it's drugs or whether it's because mental illness or whether it's because some rare homeless situation that for some reason a shelter or the government cannot fix, which again in the UK is somewhat uncommon. But the knock-on effect of your actions can cause serious bad. At some point, I don't know when it would have been. I guess begging is such an old tradition that goes back so many hundreds of years. But at some point, someone worked out that was a thing they could do. And I'd argue someone would work it out if they didn't. But let's say there was a man who invented the profession of begging, right? The first person to enable that would have therefore, done a really good thing, helped someone who was in need, but then also, the uncomfortableness, like, if you've, again, if you live in a major city and you're a female, you probably do know that, like, these people can get aggressive because they know the more they get in your face, the more chance you have of giving them money, which means that the safety of a lot of the, the people I know and care about in my life is threatened, even though probably not directly, but it feels like it's threatened by some of these things. So by doing something which seems neutral in the world, you can have a knock-on effect that's really, really negative, and maybe even against the values you believe in, I would imagine, I hope that's against your values. I mean, if it's not, whatever. Everyone's got to do their own things. Some people think that, I don't want to finish that sentence, but, everyone, my point is that there are knock-on effects to everything that determine how good or bad something really is. And because we don't know all of them, it can be really tricky to work out what is an objectively good thing to do or a bad thing to do. That's why there's someone, if we go back to my previous thing, the whole climate change thing, right? No one can really work out the international, what the response should be to that. You might think that you do, but you've got to get all of the different political systems in the world. Getting a dictatorship on board with solving climate change actually would probably be pretty easy. That's one of the easiest arguments in favor of that. Getting a democracy that consists of, to take, I don't know, America, one of the more famous ones, it's like you need to get 50 states on board, or the majority of those states, but not the majority of those states, the majority of the electoral votes in their state. You're going to get those people on board, and the majority in each of those individual things, and then you've got to convince them that it should be this radical, and they should be hurt in this way. It's not possible, right? It's not a thing that you can do, because every individual in that group has their own beliefs about what that would do, what this would do, for example. And that might sound like just a really bleak, depressing view of the world. Like, oh yeah, well, we can't do anything because people can't think of the wider group mentality. But, well, beyond the wider... Oh, we've got a bunch of blue ice in here. How useful. That might seem like the point I'm trying to raise. And maybe it is. Maybe you should just be depressed for the world and depressed for everything within it. But I also think that's why it's important to consider, on some basic level, take this all away, take away all these constraints, and just say, what is good? What is something I could do that would cause some good? And I think there's a lot of things you can do in your own life that would really help out. Like, how are you going to solve the, I don't know, the climate crisis if you can't solve the microclimate crisis that's around you right now? If you're in the bathroom watching this, isn't your bathroom a bit of a mess? Couldn't you fix that? Why don't you fix that? Oh, you don't really have a reason? Maybe you should fix that, Maybe that's a smaller thing. But I also think ignoring the oh yeah, well, once you realize why you don't want to do that, or if you just choose to do it, which you should do, by the way, your bathroom's a mess. It's really ugly. Why haven't you fixed that? Or if you live, with your parents, maybe you're in school and that homework rant hit true. You might have a room. You probably have a room, right? That's how most people live their lives. You might have a room. Why is it so awful? Why is it that every time you get there, it's a familiar mess, but it's home? Why is under your bed filled with things that you don't really need, but you just don't want to deal with? Why is that the case? Couldn't you fix those things? Yeah, go ahead, fix that, etc., etc. Why is your desktop on your, this is, I'm the worst for this. I don't manage files and delete things I don't need until I physically need to. Why are things like that for you? Fix things in your more personal area, and then you'll know, because, if you can't convince you to do something, how can you convince the world to do something? Especially something, which you might think is really big. But if we take a step down from that, because I don't like talking about anything to do with climate change or blah, 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 blah. It's just boring, bad subjects for the internet. Sorry if you disagree. But the whole thing of good and evil is so try and evaluate on the most basic level what is good. And I think the easiest way is because, we as humans have a concept called value, something that creates value to the world as a whole all the time. I think, the modern view we need to have on the world is oh yeah, there are some actions that cause more good than others. What are those actions, and how do we do more of those things? These are the questions we should be asking. Are we asking them? That's something you can say for yourself. But yeah, we need to look at the world and work out what creates value and why. And I would say, to give a really good example, even though money is one of the systems people try to use, the one issue of money, because I believe in the world working, People like to be like, oh, capitalism's the worst. Oh, the monetary system we all live under, it's so terrible. But, you know, the truth is it gives an easy way to measure a lot of things. And a lot of the things that are good in the world, as well as the bad things, but a lot of the good things are done in the world because having value that is measured in some objective unit, you know, the amount of gold, the amount of physical paper currency, means that you can never do something for someone and receive more than what it is worth. Every single trade that exchanged money, again, this is part of a video, like, idea I've been working with forever. I don't know when or how it's going to come out. It's my next, like, big politics plus Minecraft video, or explaining a big concept in the world using Minecraft in a way that you wouldn't expect. But one of the big flaws in the only big flaw is that when you trade something for money, you always get more value than you gave money. And that works both ways. When you work for someone, they always give you less money than they received value, in whatever way that might be. But also when you pay someone to work for you, or you don't probably, because most people don't have employees, but when you buy fruit at the grocery store, that grocery store, you know, you gave them less money than that banana had to you. When you know, that is how human exchange of value works. A lot of people forget the second half of that. They're like, oh yeah, well, it's not just me. You know, it's not just people buying things from me. You know, there's one time in your life where you're a seller most of the time, which is selling your time, which is how people think about things. But also the rest of the time in your life, you're a buyer. And every time you buy anything ever, when you bought Minecraft, I'm sure you got way more value from it than it cost you, right? At least if you're here watching this video, or at least you thought you would. The value of being able to open Minecraft was more than you got from it. If you take, I don't know, literally anything in the world. What have I bought recently? You know, I bought some tickets to go to America. Maybe you know about, you know, I'm going to, I guess that wasn't recent. I went to Australia, okay? I spent what might be a lot of money to some people to go to Australia because I'm very excited to be there. And if you hear that number, you might think, oh Jesus, like that's too high, so I can't look up the price of flights from the UK to Australia, and then be like, whoa, yeah, that is a high amount. But the value I got from it in the end was higher, which meant that the amount that I thought that would add to my life is more than the money I gave in return. That is the fundamental principle behind every economic system. Even literally, like if you take communism, the opposite one, you're not going to do something for someone unless the value is higher. Under some, again, like Stalinism, the reason the value is higher is like, I will sell this thing at this price because if I don't, I'll go to prison. I value, even if I get less than I need for something, I value not going to prison this amount, and therefore I'd like to continue that. Also, let's try out the Blue Ice Pathway now. So yeah, it's a lot slower with these gaps in between, but then it gets a lot faster when we get away from that. So that's useful to know. Good stuff, in my opinion. And yeah, maybe we should put some like guardrails up, or maybe we shouldn't. I don't know for sure. But yeah, one of the big things that a lot of people forget is that there is a value system in the world inherently, but we should use that same idea for when you want to do something. Even though a lot of things are undervalued by the world, because fundamentally, the only reason you ever give money for something is if you value the thing more than you value the money you're about to trade. And the only reason you give someone money for something, the only reason you take money for something is because you value your time less than you value whatever hourly wage you're going to get. Because it works both ways. Every exchange, both parties generally get something from. What if we took that same approach that fundamentally makes the world spin around, etc., and we use that as like our basis of what is good in the world? If more people appreciate it than it takes from me, or if just more people appreciate it than don't appreciate it, shouldn't that be a good thing? And the only reason that is not easy to do is because most people don't think about the world. They think about themselves. Maybe they think about their family, their little tribe. But if everyone just thinks about the world, if we make that fundamental shift in schools and this and that, if we try and align ourselves in a way that everyone makes better things to the world, wouldn't that be good? And yeah, that's the fundamental point I'm trying to raise right here, is that there is no such thing as a universal good or a universal evil. And although it's impossible to define one, I think the easiest place to start is just to remember the world is a big place filled with lots of different people, and you can affect those people in lots of different ways. And the easiest way is just very slightly alter how you think about things to whoever you know, like, I don't know. For instance, if you think that, hey, doesn't it suck that Myanmar, or doesn't it suck that, like, I don't know, Poland, if you look at in Europe, for example, I don't know, country that's doing pretty badly is Moldova. If you look at Moldova and you're like, hey, that's not fair. Just because they were, invaded by the Soviet Union, separated from the rest of their country, and they're going through some stuff, I don't think they should be doing as bad as they are. Buy some products from Moldova. It might cost you a few dollars, pounds, whatever more, but then that changes the value because you're helping something you believe in. I don't know why anyone cares about Moldova enough to buy things from there more. I will say, I bought something which I didn't expect would be from Moldova from there recently. I felt kind of good about that. I bought, I think it was a bottle of vodka. There's a whole thing about what I bought. It's a fire extinguisher, but it's filled with liquids that wouldn't put out a fire, but would very much add to it. And yeah, but the value I got from that was more than I spent, even though it had to be shipped through Moldova, through the EU, through to the UK. There was like a few steps involved in getting it to me. But, I did a thing that was a little bit more complex or more expensive or whatever, but in exchange, I got a thing. All you've got to do is very slightly alter your worldview so that you think about if you could think about every single human in the world, every time you made a decision, and you could weigh in, if you made every single person equally valid, and that way you could work out like, oh yeah, this decision to buy this banana, this helps 65,000 people in a positive way, but it affects, 18 million people in a negative way, that would be bad. If you could work out like, oh yeah, supporting, Nestle, it helps me right now, and it vaguely helps the grocery store, but also, something, list bad things Nestle has done, right? Honestly, can we talk about something? A lot of people on the internet really hate Nestle, right? Can we talk about the real reason you should hate that company? It's the fact that their chocolate just sucks, right? If it was good, I'd be like, sure, maybe it's worth those 18 million people suffering because it's so good that I just need their chocolate. But it's cheap, it's bad, they're from Switzerland. They're a Swiss company. Switzerland knows how to make chocolate, but they don't because it's cheaper. That's the real scandal. Don't look up their actual scandals. Think about how bad their chocolate is compared to their competition, and that's the reason you shouldn't buy things from them. But yeah, what is good, what is value? I would argue, and this is just my relative viewpoint because I have my own values and systems and stuff, is that when you add the things that people want into their lives to more people than you add things that take away from people's lives, you're doing good. It's impossible to define all the things as part of that. It's impossible to define what real value is, because again, people only sell things for less than the value of something. You might think that an apartment that you buy is worth $150,000. Is that an apartment size somewhere? Somewhere in America, you're like, wow, so I am going to buy an apartment worth that much. It's not actually worth that much. It will be worth that much to someone in the future, hopefully, and it's worth that much to you right now. But its objective value doesn't exist if there's no buyers and sellers. Like houses are one of the biggest examples of that because you buy, one house in a lifetime, sometimes 2 or 3. So they don't change hands very often. It's like fine art as well. If something doesn't change hands very often, it's hard to measure its value because that's the only way we can tell. But even then, we're not telling what something costs or what something is. We're telling what someone thinks is more than that. There are situations, because, okay, wait. One of my favorite examples of this is water, right? Bottled water is the most ridiculous product in the world. Can we all agree on that? Like, I buy bottled water, I want to clarify. But I think it's a very ridiculous product. I think it shouldn't exist on any fundamental level. If you think about base good and evil and what should you do under capitalism to profit, blah, blah, blah. If you think about the value it adds, if you think about it on one level, it's like, this is not a new consumer product. You take something we already have for free, although it's not really free, it's just very cheap and you pay for it indirectly via taxation usually. Sometimes you pay a water bill like I do. Pro tip, by the way, have I mentioned this yet? Pay your water bill. If you don't, they get very angry with you. I have learned that lesson. But whole side story on that. But bottled water sounds like it makes no sense to anyone. And you might say the biggest flaw of capitalism is that you can charge sometimes $5 for a bottle of water. But if someone gets more than $5 worth of value from that, and if they're choosing to buy it, which sometimes their decisions can be warped by the fact that they're so thirsty they might die. Again, that would be bad. That would be extortion, profiteering. I don't know what the word is, but we have a word for that that is not a good one. Fun fact. Maybe you don't know that. I'm going to try and get this boat going straight, by the way. It's going to be tricky. I'm going to believe myself, and I'm going to do it. But, yeah, basically... Oh, man. Have we done it? No, we haven't. But but basically, yeah, every single thing in the world that exists because it has value people, and we need to work out what value systems are broken by fear and emotions and stuff, and we need to start driving those value decisions by things that are good for people. Like, I don't know, well, I choose to buy a lot of things that I think are really good, and I choose to buy a lot of things that I think are really bad. I choose to do a lot of things that I think are good, generally a lot more than I do things that I think are bad. And that's the things you do and the things that you buy are two different things we have. Because let's be honest, in real society, there are like three values you can have. There's your oh god, oh no, this is sad. But there's a lot of different ways you can be valued, and one of those ways is that money has a value of its own. Wow, have your own debate as to whether that's a thing. But in a system where that is the truth, which is the starting point you probably have to work from, right? Like, it's really easy to say, what if the world wasn't the way that it is right now, and all the things that have happened in the past didn't happen? What if Hitler never rose to... Well, I said the H word, now the video's demonetized. What if man from Germany during 1939 to 1945, what if he wasn't there during those times, and all those people didn't have to die? That'd be nice, but it happened, so let's work out how to deal with, you know, the victims, the tragedy, the fact that, you know, fundamentally a country can end up doing that, and how we should stop countries from leaning towards doing that, because that was a democracy thing. I mean, a weak democracy thing, but it was a valid-ish move using real laws and legal things that were real. Looking at the past and learning lessons from it, looking at the present and accepting that it's not perfect is something I think is really important to do. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think that's a broken world point, because it means that you can justify bad things because you'll be altering the future from which people will have to accept as being a thing. What I think is the fundamental point of today's video is like, what is good, what is bad? We have so many ways of measuring, so many of them are all wrong. But if you try to measure using all of them for everyone all the time, you'll be perfect. And obviously my point of that is ridiculous. No one can do that all the time, but you can do your best. And if more people try to do their best, if more people try to think about what it means to do their best, then we'll do better as a whole. If we do better as individuals, we do better as a collective. And a lot of people are really hesitant to think that individual action can be a thing. And I think that definitely you need to pick your battles. You can't fight every single thing all the time, or you're not really fighting anything. But at the same time, society is just 7.5 billion now. What's the exact human population as of making this video? I want to say we're getting closer to 8 billion than 7 billion these days. The human population, 7.7 billion people. There's something called World Population Clock.info. Yeah, it's rising by a pretty scary amount too. Not scary, I wouldn't say. I think, like, again, the trend of population growth is going the opposite way. But today's video is not about population growth. It's about the fact that there's that many people. There have been, like, in the course of this video, there's been thousands of people born. Think about that. Thousands of new lives. Thousands of new lives that could be the next Hitler, could be the next... I was going to say Gandhi, but that's a really bad example because there's a lot of questionable things in that too. But, yeah, could be the next Mother Teresa. I think she was probably... What has Mother Teresa actually done? You know what? I'm going to look that up. She was an Albanian Indian born in North Macedonia, and she set up some charities, and she has homes for people dying of a lot of different bad illnesses. Also soup kitchens. Okay, she's probably a good person. I mean, better than you are. How many soup kitchens have you set up in your life? Oh, none? What's that? You didn't clean your bathroom earlier when I mentioned it? Oh, you can't clean your bathroom and you can't put together a soup kitchen, but you expect me to take your views seriously about how we should, you know, seize everything in the means of production. I don't know what the means would be here, but yeah, oh, what's that? That's a ridiculous opinion. Yeah, of course it is. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you don't need to do things to expect other people to do things. Maybe you should be the supreme dictator of the world, and everyone else is ridiculous for not seeing it. That's definitely my opinion, that's for sure. But no, there is a underlying point I want to raise here. Just like, hey, a lot of people, humans are a crazy eclectic mix of people, always moving in wild directions all the time, and it can seem scary. I think it's promising though that it seemed scary for so long and yet we've achieved so much good, and we've solved every issue we've run into so far. And although it only takes one big issue for humanity to mess up on to kind of fail pretty heavily, I think the cool thing about humans is no matter how bad we mess up, we haven't gone extinct yet. In fact, there are more humans alive right now than there have ever been. Right now, there's more humans alive than there was 10 seconds ago. The world arguably is a better place, at least in terms of the spread of our species, than it was when I started this video. Not because I made this video. There's probably a chance you're going to do something bad and justify it using wrong means. But there's also a chance that you'll think about what it means to do good and how you can actually do more good rather than thinking about doing more good. I've made so much blue ice already. Well, this is going to be fun, isn't it? I can work on this blue ice pathway, which is something that's essential to get done. That's definitely on my to-do list. But first on my to-do list is saying goodbye to all of you, because these videos have been getting really long. I'm trying to actively fight that. And I know some people really do like the long videos too, and I appreciate your opinion. I value it a lot, in fact. Wow, value, it all comes around to good and evil. I think your opinion of me is a good thing for me. I think when you enjoy these videos, it might seem like, oh yeah, you just get some entertainment. But also you allow the livelihood of a crazy eccentric man who, does a lot of, enjoys one of his hobbies to an insane extent. I travel a lot as a result, and I see some crazy things that I try to share as a result back to you. But there's a lot of knock-on impacts to everything you're ever going to do ever. And that can seem like, ooh, scary and inaction. But I think of it as the opposite. I think of it as like, wow, there's so much. When you watched a video, especially on YouTube, corporate media, there's so many people with so many pies and hands and stuff like that. But when you watch this video by this one guy on this one internet, like, hey, yeah, this is me having watched it is not only having helped myself, maybe you've learned something. Maybe you're actually going to be like, hey, I now know how I can do X or Y, Z, whatever better. Maybe that's your takeaway from this. Or maybe you just know that by making it to this point, you did help the videos. And yeah, thank you to everyone who says they want longer videos. I want longer videos on some level too, but I also want for people to see those things. And YouTube has very nebulous and both nebulous and strict at the same time, which is funny. But they have very nebulous, very strict rules about what allows someone to see your content. And sadly, making super long videos that people don't want to click on, like new people, makes it less likely that even your existing subscribers will be able to click on them. Which is tragic, you could say. Or maybe it's beautiful because it means that I have to always be focusing on new and next and all these things. And not only producing value for the people who like me right now, but maybe for people who might like me in the future. Yeah, think about that as a thing for your head. Also, I mean, this video was very monetary based, but I think money is just an easy system for anyone to measure because it has numbers in it. Like, this morning, I'm going to check my phone because it's got my history on it. What's the last thing that I bought? Okay, so... It's cool that we live in an era where I can check what the last thing I bought was using my phone. But payment method, then we go to MasterCard. I spent £6.55 in my local supermarket. I bought some over-the-counter drugs. I think I bought 5 bananas. Oh, bananas! It all works out! Oh my god! I bought some bananas, I bought some drugs, and I think that was... Yeah, I think that was literally it. I was going to get something more, then I decided it wasn't worthwhile. But yeah, it's easy to say £6.55. That is less than I found value from those drugs. But I'm saying drugs because that's what they call them in America. Obviously, medication. Medication I'm not actually using right now. It's just like, I know I'll need this in the not so near future. It seems really weird to say that, doesn't it? Like, I know I'm going to need to fix myself later. I'm going to get this now, so when I'm sick, I won't need to get it. And yeah, I don't know. That's like preparation or something. But yeah, also, do you want to go through my purchases together? Do you think you'd find that fun? Should we do that in a video sometime? Just all the things I've bought in the last week. Because I spent more than that, £6.75, on literally one meal, one bao bun, earlier in London. And that was arguably a lot worse than the drugs that will save my life. But the reason they're valued the same is not because they're worth the same amount. It's because you have different needs at different times and different things you want to fulfill. Yo, let me know if you want to see me dive through my transaction history of the last week. What a fun video idea. But no, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this. I am seriously asking, even though I really don't want the answer to be yes, but if it is, then, I can do anything. I am You know, no one can tell you what you can and cannot do. That is the one thing about this game, and the one thing about life that maybe you need to learn. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'm gonna go eat some food now, which is gonna cost me less money than I find value from the food. And I'm gonna see you all in the next video. Goodbye. I could have totally made a push in there about how, like, oh yeah, if you value this channel more than $4.99 a month, you can click the link in the description and you can become a member of the channel. And that's a way to monthly support it or whatever. But, you know, I just hope you do something good. Do some, you know, fix your bathroom. It's been 40-something minutes and you haven't cleaned your bathroom. What's wrong with you? You know, do something nice. Hug a stranger. Smile at someone you like. I don't know. Do that. I'd appreciate that a bit more, I think. Also, give me money though if it's just lying around anyway. I mean, but yeah, goodbye.